So I'm going to sow some seeds. I'm going to show you how I sow my seeds. And the seed we're sowing today is oxeye daisy that I collected locally last year. Now, I've already sown one batch of these from the seed that I saved last year, so I know the seed is viable. The seed of oxeye daisy is tiny, so when I'm sowing seed that's really small, I tend to sow it onto a big open seed tray like this, because it just makes it much easier. When I'm sowing bigger seed, something like calendula maybe, I tend to use these modular trays, and then each little seed ends up with its own compartment. So these with the oxeye daisy, I'm going to sow broadcasted across this, and then they'll have to be pricked out, which I'll show you again. So these are some that I sowed about 6 weeks ago. I've already started to plant these out into an area that we're transforming into a bit of a wildflower meadow. And you can see they're really tight together. So I know that this seed is viable, and I also know that this time I'd like to sow it a little bit more thinly. Okay? So I've already filled up the seed tray. I've used the Klausmann compost. I tap it down so there's no air. I have my label in with the date already. And now I'm going to show you the seed. Just scatter a little bit onto my hand. I didn't clean the seed very well, but if you go in close there, you can see those tiny, tiny, tiny little, like there, that's a seed. There's little bits of chaff in there too, but it didn't seem to make any difference the last time. So what I'm going to do is just take my time and sprinkle it across this seed tray now. So you need to slow right down when you're sowing seed. This is something that I've learned, and actually that's why it can be very enjoyable, because no matter what else is going on, you need to slow down when you're doing it. So it can kind of calm you down. So you can see it very clearly on top of the compost because it's a different colour. Okay, I'm just going to take my time now. I think the last time some of the little seeds were all stuck right together, so a whole lot came up. So I'm hoping these will be a little bit thinner and they'll get a little bit longer in the seed tray. So if you sow too many, it can lead to problems with damping off disease, although I've never had a problem with that, but sometimes that can happen. So try and give them a little bit of space. That didn't take long really. Okay, now because this seed is so tiny, I'm not going to cover this in compost at all. All I would do with this now is water it, and I'll show you that at the very end. And I'd leave it somewhere outside because we're towards the end of May, so the climate is warm enough. So the oxeye daisies that are in this tray, I just want to show you what the root structure on them is like. So I'm sticking my dibber in. You can see they're all knotted and matted together. So you actually have to be quite rough. This is what I tend to do outside. Pull a lump of them. See, I'm kind of pulling it and letting it go. So you can see these really, really need to go in. And what I ideally want to do is take out each individual plant. So look at the there's one little oxeye daisy plant. So I have been planting these out into an area that's cleared outside. But what you could also do, I have a little pot here, okay? Make a little hole with the dibber. Make sure all the root is tucked in. I have sown these before, so I know they're quite tough. So all the root is in, a little squeeze, a little tap, and water it. So that one now can be left to grow on in this pot. And these I could plant out now as plugs into the meadow. And I'll probably do that this weekend, plant all these out. So we're going to look at pricking out now. Okay, so these are sea asters. I got this seed from True Harvest in Northern Ireland. This is a plant that's actually usually found by the coast, but I'm looking to replace the asters, the ornamental asters in my garden with something. So I thought I'd try these. So you can see I actually sowed these, I'm looking at the label, the 27th of March. That's a long time ago. And I sowed them in rows. So you can see what the germination rate was like. Not too bad, okay? So some of them, like this one here, are very much ready to be planted out. And in fact, once they get their first set of true leaves, they're ready to be planted out. So if you look closely, maybe we look at this one here, okay? So down here on the bottom, see these ones that are kind of gone a darker colour? These are the Cotyledons. So these are the first leaves that the plant puts up, and they're like little solar panels. And they take in loads of sun, they help the plant to grow. And then these are the true leaves. So these are the proper leaves of the plant. Often the Cotyledons die once the true leaves start to be put on, okay? So these now need to be put into, either planted out, or put into their own little module. So if I take it out and try and get a good chunk of compost with it, so look at that, it's lovely. It's not lovely root structure. They're not too congested because I took my time sowing them, so there's not too many in it. So now I'm going to pot them into this modular tray. So I've filled it with compost, I've tapped it down, there's a little hole here. Okay, so you just, again, you take your time. It's actually very easy to do. You just tuck it in. I have a little pile of compost here, and I'll put a little bit around the root. Okay, I'll do one more just to show you. Okay, I'll take the one beside it. So hold the leaf. If you can hold the cotyledon, great, or hold the leaf, but don't ever hold the stem, because if it snaps, that's the end of your plant. So I'm just trying to poke around and get as much. Look at that, beautiful. And I took them all in. And that's it, with a little bit of compost. A bit of root sticking out there. So what I found is their plants are quite tough. We're treating them like little babies, really doing this to them. They can often self-seed on their own. So this is just giving them every chance. So they will stay in this until I look at the bottom and see little white roots starting to come out. And then I'll be able to just stick my finger in here, push it out. It should hold on to all the compost, and then they can be transplanted out into their permanent spot. So the final step is watering. Very important to water them. Some people leave their seed trays sitting in water, but normally I just water with a fine rose head on my watering can. So these are the oxeye daisies. Okay? So I get the water going over here, and this is rainwater. So this should drive some of the seeds underneath. So you really give them a thorough watering. It's a bit cold still, even though it's May, so I'm going to leave these in the tunnel. And this is the little oxeye daisy. I leave them in the tunnel, maybe even until they've just started to sprout, and then I'll move them outside.